Spawn Point, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Rad.
I'm Bajo.
I'm Goose.
And I am D.A.R.R.E.N.
Coming up on the show, we take the highway to the danger zone.
Highway to the danger zone.
Danger zone.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum, we have the very thoughtful and heartfelt adventure game, Rakuen.
I will admit that game stirred my emotion circuits.
Oh, really, D.A.R.R.E.N? I thought you had those removed.
Oh no, D.A.R.R.E.N just had his crying chips removed. Yeah, because of all the tears causing rust.
Robot issues. All right, D.A.R.R.E.N, how about a challenge?
Indeed. Strike up those memory cell spawnlings. It's time for D.A.R.R.E.N's challenge. Today, I'm asking you this. In Minecraft Story Mode, what are the names of the 4 Order of the Stone members? Answer at the end of the show.
One's a warrior.
Yeah, and one's a rogue.
But the challenge requires their names, guys, their names. For now, let's get on with the first review.
Now, Bajo and Rad, you may remember that I am in fact an excellent stunt driver.
Oh, I had no idea, D.A.R.R.E.N. How do you reach the pedals?
Yeah, how do you even fit in a car?
Do you need a reminder? Roll the tape, Lee.
I feel safest of all.
See? I'm totally legit. Now, hop in the back seat, you two, because it's time to enter the danger zone. Oh, the destruction. Explosions. Pile-ups, 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 pile-ups. Danger Zone is an arcade car crashing game. Your goal is to rack up an expensive bill of destruction. Your motivation is crumpling car pile-ups. This game just speaks to me.
Oh, I can tell, D.A.R.R.E.N. Danger Zone was made by the same people that made Dangerous Golf, and some of the devs worked on some of the recent Need for Speed games.
Oh, I love the Need for Speed games, Rad, but this game is nothing like them. It has no racing at all.
Correct, Bajo. You only race to your doom. Danger Zone takes place in a variety of simulations. You'll be presented with a track, and then you're let loose to wreak havoc.
But there is method to your madness. Each round has a monetary target based on how much damage you do. And it gets pretty tricky to reach some of these targets in later tracks.
It certainly does, Rad. I couldn't even finish some of the later courses.
The trick to beating a course is through careful trial and error and planning your path. Once you crash, you can then control the car's momentum and direction through the air, for a time. Activating a smash breaker sets off another explosion, giving you increased momentum again. Chaining them together is essential. Bouncing around as many cars as possible and creating traffic pile-ups will get you the most cash.
You really need to have a plan for each map too. There are cash pickups on the track, but more importantly, there are smash breaker pickups too. Bouncing around to pick up all of these is essential to winning most challenges.
I quite like the idea of creating a mess, then bouncing over to another area, creating an even bigger mess, and then doing it again and again. It's a leapfrog of vehicular carnage. I often found myself wondering what the other drivers must think of me racing into traffic with such reckless abandon.
Yeah, I also wonder what kind of world this is. I mean, who's paying for all the damage? Who's running these tests?
Clearly, story is not the game's strong point, but at least the cars look great. The slow motion during explosions adds to the experience too, but I did expect some more detail to the graphics overall, especially the fire effects.
Yeah, it is a little bland to look at, but it's not an overly expensive game. It's also not very long from what I can tell. But I do find it hard to recommend, mostly because it all takes place in this drab car park environment.
Yeah, it didn't take me long to get pretty sick of these levels. Although I did like how the gameplay mixed up when you were forced to start shoving cars in certain directions before you actually crash.
Yeah, that was pretty cool, but I did struggle, you know? Overall, I feel like the difficulty is a bit unbalanced.
Noob.
Excuse me, Darren, did you just call me a noob? Have you finished this game?
Distraction laser.
What's a distraction? Whoa, what's going on?
Rad, what are your final thoughts?
Well, while the destruction was pretty cool, it was too simple to be fun. I'm giving it 2 out of 5 rubber chickens. Bajo? Bajo!
Oh, sorry, I was very distracted for a moment there. Yeah, this game doesn't really do anything new, and after about an hour, you're kind of done with it. I'm gonna give it 1.5 out of 5 rubber chickens.
Back in my day, tech demos were given away for free.
Oh, come back, games! Come back, games! Games!
Oh my, what a horrible nightmare. Oh, you're here, my little factolites. I just had a vision of a world without video games. Oh, the horror. But it's a reality that almost came to be, and many put the blame for the great video game crash at the feet of just one game. The game many call the worst game ever made. This is the story of E.T., the extraterrestrial. Let me set the scene for you. It was the early 1980s, and video games had emerged from their early years into what many dubbed a golden age. The success of early arcade games had set the stage for breakout hits like Galaga, Donkey Kong, and of course, the full-blown cultural sensation that was Pac-Man. Home consoles and computers were steadily growing in popularity, bringing games into the homes of millions of gamers for the first time. And it was in this warm, comfortable glow of success that the largest player in the industry, Atari, let it all spiral out of control. It was coming up to Christmas, 1982, and the world had been charmed by Steven Spielberg's feature film about an alien trying to find his way home. So, of course, in what was still a novelty for the time, Atari decided to make a video game tie-in and paid tens of millions of dollars for the rights to do it. But with the crucial Christmas shopping season fast approaching, Atari rushed to get the game done, giving one of their gun programmers, Howard Scott Warshaw, the near impossible task of creating a blockbuster game from scratch in just 5 weeks. Howard succeeded in making the game, and given the huge popularity of the film, Atari expected the game to do very well. So, millions of cartridges were made, and it sold very well that Christmas. But as young girls and boys began to open their presents and actually play the game, they found it was truly horrid. It was too hard and too weird, with strange characters doing strange things, and E.T. constantly falling into pits. And so, the game started being returned to shops en masse. And now Atari had millions of cartridges no one wanted, leading them to financial ruin. The following year, the video game market crashed, and crashed hard. Many big gaming companies went bankrupt, and profits flatlined for years. Many thought that video games were nothing more than a fad that had come and gone. Thankfully, Nintendo arrived on the scene a few years later with the NES and Mario, and the industry once again prospered. But legend has it that all those unsold ET cartridges now lay buried in the desert, a monument to the time gaming almost died. And while recent excavation did turn up a few buried copies, the fabled millions remained lost to time and sand. Of course, it isn't entirely fair to blame E.T. for the crash. It was the result of several factors, like an oversaturation of consoles and terrible games, all creating a perfect storm. And many would quite fairly say that there are far worse games out there than E.T. But perhaps because it was seen as a high-profile failure, or as the straw that broke the industry's back, it's a legend that endures as the worst game ever. There you go, my little factolites. Now, I need to go play some good games to get the taste of all that terribleness out of my mouth. Shovelware, yuck. Ruins everything.
Okay, Okay, it's time to get the answers to some questions.
Yes.
And first up, we have this one from D.A.R.R.E.N's Control Receptor in Bendigo, Victoria.
What's D.A.R.R.E.N's control receptor doing in Bendigo?
It bended and then it goed over there.
That makes sense.
Hello, Good Game SP. I have a few questions that require answering. If you don't answer, I will fry D.A.R.R.E.N's receptors. 1. Do the Super Mario games have a timeline? 2. What Legend of Zelda game is your favorite? 3. What is your favorite game publisher? Thank you, : P.S. D.A.R.R.E.N, do these. I'm controlling you.
Well, let me just get Darren on the phone here.
Beep boop, beep beep boop, beep boop.
Bajo is cool, Rad is rad, but D.A.R.R.E.N is awesome. Well, Mr. Receptor, I'm tempted to say that no, Mario games don't really have a timeline. I mean, they don't really have much of a story to begin with, so you wouldn't think that they would have some big, grand timeline that they all fit into.
But then there was Baby Mario in the Yoshi's Island games, which does hint that there's a bit of a timeline.
Yes, you're not wrong there, Bajo. Maybe we should get Darren on the old ring-a-ding-ding
let's get him
phone
on the phone,
here and
yeah.
see what he says.
Ring and doos.
Hello, D.A.R.R.E.N speaking.
Hey, Darren, welcome back. We were just wondering, do the Super Mario games have a timeline?
Well, of course they do. In theory, at least. Nintendo has never confirmed the games as being on any official timeline. However, bits of dialogue and information throughout the games do place many of them in a chronological order. But there has also been many inconsistencies between games, and because there is no official timeline, there are several different theories about where exactly all the games sit.
So what is the timeline then? Please, walk us through it, Darren.
Well, it'd take too long for me to go through all of the games and how they all link to each other now, but all theories agree that the Yoshi's Island games with Baby Mario are the earliest in the timeline, and from that point, it is somewhat open to interpretation. But my favourite theory comes from a YouTuber called Spiggy G, who suggests that after Yoshi's Island, Mario lived in Brooklyn, where the events of games like Donkey Kong and Wrecking Crew take place. But Bowser finds him and sends his Koopa army in the original Mario Brothers. Mario then discovers the Mushroom Kingdom through these pipes. He then makes a compelling case for where the rest of the games follow in that timeline. So if you're interested, I recommend watching his video.
Oh, well, does he try to explain where Mario Kart fits into the whole shebang?
Oh, affirmative, Brad. He suggests that after Mario came into a huge amount of wealth in New Super Mario Bros. 2, he bought up various race companies. It's after that where all the Mario spin-offs like Mario Kart and Mario Party take place. And of course, at that point, Bowser has finally given up trying to defeat Mario after so many failures. So that's why they are not sworn enemies anymore.
Well, that makes a strange amount of sense, but still, it sounds a little far-fetched to me, Darren.
Well, it is just a fan theory. And don't forget that Mario creator Shigeru Miyamoto has said that the setting of all his games was partly inspired by the old black and white Popeye cartoons. So that's something to consider as well, because those cartoons had no continuity at all.
Well, seems like the Mario games have a lot more going on underneath the surface than you would think. Thanks for that, Darren. It was super interesting.
Oh, my pleasure.
Bye.
Hi, Darren.
Bye, Darren. Bye.
Let's talk a lot. Well, my favourite Legend of Zelda game is probably the new one because it's awesome.
Totally, I so agree. As for our favorite publisher, well, that's a bit tricky. I mean, each publisher tends to be great at doing certain things really well, so I all like them for different reasons.
Yeah, I mean, Nintendo always make really high-quality, family-friendly games and often have some very inventive ideas, but they don't make that many. Ubisoft always put out a few great games each year with something for everyone, and they're one of the first publishers to really support a new console when it comes out, although they do tend to repeat themselves sometimes.
But you gotta support the new consoles.
Yeah.
EA tends to be great at making high-octane action games, and of course, they're the go-to publisher for most sports games. Although Take-Two also put out some excellent 2K sports games and loads of other great games like Civilization. Sony makes some great story-driven games and family-friendly titles, and they support lots of smaller, innovative studios too.
Microsoft have been doing well with their Forza games, and personally, I'd like to see them take a few more risks. Activision Blizzard tend to play it safe too, with just a few big tentpole games each year, but they've always got high production values. Oh, and Blizzard, they take ages to make a game, but when they release it, it's covered in so much
Oh,
polish.
just painted and polished.
Oh.
More polishing. All the polish.
So polished.
Those are some of the biggest console publishers. But of course, there's lots of other great ones. Too many to name.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I can't forget Sega though, because of Sonic. I love Sonic.
Yeah. Oh, and Warner Brothers brothers who do the Lego games. They're so good. But really, we can't pick a favorite. We love them all in different ways. And without them, we'd have less games to play. And that would be a tragedy.
Yes, as long as they help make good games, then they are my favorite.
Well, that ended up being quite a big answer. So we should move on now to this from Min Min, who is in Ramen Bowl, Victoria. Oh, it sounds delicious.
Yeah, I love ramen. You know what I like to put in my ramen?
Eggs.
Yes. Hi, SP! I have a question about arms. Why did some people get arms early? Rad, do these. Banjo, do these. Thanks.
Well, Min Min, thank you for writing to us about arms. Ooh, there's two possibilities there. Firstly, some people, like us in fact, get games early. Games reviewers and influential streamers or content creators are usually given copies of games before they're officially released.
Yes, that way we can play and review games and help spread the word about them if they're worth getting.
Otherwise, you may be talking about the recent global test punches they held for the game over a few different weekends. These were basically open betas that anyone could download and play before the game's release. So no doubt you would have seen a whole bunch of people playing.
Indeed. And they did that partly to give people a demo to try the game and get excited for it, and also to help test out their online servers and matchmaking technology. That way they can iron out any potential bugs or issues, so when the game comes out, going online and finding matches should all work flawlessly.
In theory anyway. Something can always go wrong. But let's move on now to a video question from Phoenix in Victoria.
Hello, my name is Phoenix and I will ask you 3 questions. 1. Would you rather Terraria, Minecraft or Roblox? 2. Which games should I get that people would find interesting because I'm a YouTuber? And 3. Which Yu-Gi-Oh card game can I get that I can scan the code on the cards into? Thank you.
Thanks for your video, Phoenix. And to answer your first question, I'd say I actually prefer Terraria. That's the one I had the most fun with, at least. I love all of them, but just something about collecting all the gear and the way you fought enemies and building those elevators down to hell, something about Terraria really spoke to me.
Yeah, I really loved Terraria as well. I would say that even though Roblox has that great element of building other games that you can play, and Minecraft is obviously a massive one, Terraria just had the magic for me.
Satisfying, would you say?
Yes, it would.
Yeah. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. They're all pretty awesome. As for good games to interest people as a YouTuber, well, any of those 3 are great because they're creative and extremely popular. If you can design something unique and interesting, or just use them in interesting ways, people will want to watch.
Also, any game that scares you, because people love watching other people get scared. I get scared pretty easily myself.
Yeah, see, people like to watch that. As for a Yu-Gi-Oh game you can scan codes from cards into, well, I don't actually collect Yu-Gi-Oh cards, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't really know either, but let's do a little sleuthing. Okay, well, the only code I can see anything about here is a QR code for Dual Terminal Edition cards. From the looks of it, you need to use them in special dual terminals, which apparently are only in America and Japan. Other than that, I don't see anything here about games that support card scanning.
There is an augmented reality app called Orasma that you can use to animate your cards, which is cool, but I don't think it's quite what you meant.
No, but as we both said, we are total Yu-Gi-Oh card noobs. So if anyone knows anything about that and they could help Phoenix out, let us know. And with that, we are out of time for this week. So don't forget, you can send in your own questions here.
You could say, as far as Yu-Gi-Oh goes, we are Noob-Gi-Go.
We don't Yu-Gi-No.
We don't Yu-Gi-No!
One of the incredible things about games is the way they can let you experience other people's stories, and that's exactly what this game does. Welcome to the magic of Rakuen.
Once upon a time, there lived a boy in a faraway land called Morisora's Forest.
Rakuen is a touching adventure game by Laura Shigihara. Fun fact, Shigihara actually works mostly as a composer and even did the soundtrack for Plants vs. Zombies.
Multi-talented! The game tells the story of an unnamed boy currently living in hospital who begins helping the other hospital residents find closure. We don't want to give away too much of the story because part of this game's delight is the sense of discovery and the way things unfold, but we will say there is a fantasy world and your mum gets to travel with you.
Speaking of mums, an important note for grown-ups. This game touches on some heavy themes, though often in a way that's rather implicit. It's always wise to be aware.
Absolutely, Darren. The more you know. As you move about, there's a fantastic sense of mystery to the various characters you meet, and this makes the game compelling to play. Everyone feels so interesting and real, with imperfections and rich backstories, even the non-human characters.
In my experience, non-humans are some of the most interesting people.
Too right, Darren. It was delightful seeing all the different cute, creative characters. You really feel the care that's gone into crafting this game.
Yeah, and I liked delving into people's lives to try and figure out why they act the way they do. And there were some quite moving stories too. I may have teared up once or twice.
They gave my circuits a bit of a wobble.
Oh, Darren. There were some spooky moments too. I will admit my heart skipped a beat once or twice. It can be so tense walking down dark hallways with the low, empty hum enveloping you. It might be a tad too intense for younger spawnlings, but the great thing is, this is the perfect sort of game to play with a grown-up, so don't be afraid to ask if they'd like to sit with you.
Gaming together is the best kind of gaming. Especially for spooked. Rakuen is really clever with creating different atmospheres and having you feel the right thing for the right moment. And it spans quite a range of emotions too, from playfully happy to painful regret.
A big part of what makes the game so affecting is the sound design, and it makes sense that the sound would be good because of the developer's musical background.
You could say that it's instrumental in creating the emotions.
Well, sounds right to me, Rad.
Music to my ears.
This game is so ambitious. It aims to tell several emotionally charged stories at a controlled pace using very simple gameplay. There's no difficult platforming or tricky aiming. You'll mostly be walking around talking to people and bringing them things.
Even if you don't play a lot of games, you'll have no trouble enjoying this, although prepare to do quite a bit of reading. As is typical for games in this genre, there are quite a lot of text boxes, but because the story is told quite cleverly through conversations, I didn't really mind. In fact, a few things that would normally bug me with this style of game just didn't.
I know what you mean. Usually, I'm not really a fan of running back and forth over the same areas to do what is essentially a fetch quest, but here it didn't feel quite as tedious. And I think it's because you never felt like you were being held in an area just to make the game longer. There was a generous variety of locations.
Many of the quests are rather multi-layered, requiring you to do several things for other people before you can complete the original quest. This also helps the game feel interesting, as there's continually new problems to solve. There's a hint system where you can ask Mum for help, but she only reminds you of the main quest.
Yeah, that was a tiny bit frustrating because sometimes I'd forget what the new subquest was and then get lost in areas for a while, but it was never for too long.
I felt like they could have tightened that up just a little bit. There is one area that gives you a map, but it was only kind of helpful for telling me where I needed to go anyway.
However, I loved how this used elements of retro gameplay in an updated way. It was like cherry-picking the best parts of that era.
Yeah, it's all the joyous discovery without the frustration. This is such a lovely little experience. Guys, I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 rubber chickens.
Yeah, this is a triumph. It's cleverly and thoughtfully made. Whilst I do think they overcooked some of the emotional points just a little bit, I was still impressed by its scope. I'm giving it 4.5 out of 5 rubber chickens. Guys, do you hear that? Time is ticking, so Darren, let's have the answer to your challenge.
Affirmative, Rad. At the start of the show, I asked you this. In Minecraft Story Mode, what are the names of the 4 Order of the Stone members? And the answer is Soren, Enegard, Gabriel, and Magnus.
An architect, engineer, warrior, and rogue.
I hear they're working on a second season of Story Mode too.
Ooh, cool. Now, guys, if you've been checking out the ABC Me app, you'll have noticed that Rad and I have been reporting daily from E3 with a special show direct from the USA.
And our final episode is online today, so make sure you check the ABC Me app for some super exciting news, straight from the biggest gaming event of the year. And maybe catch up on any episodes you missed.
It's been awesome, you guys. Well, I think it has, because we're recording this before you've even flown out. But E3 right now, by the time you see this, has already finished. So I think it was great, but we haven't seen it yet. Oh, I'm so confused.
Next week on Spawn Point, I've got a special guest joining to host the show with me, Pip, from News to Me.
I'll be here too, I think.
We'll have reviews of Old Man's Journey and Battle Bay.
And we'll be on our way back from America. Until next time, be nice, have fun, and keep gaming. Rad out.
Goose out.
Banjo out.
Darren out.
It's good to be back.
Have a great time.
We will.
Wait, you did?
We have. We're going to?
Did you bring me a present?
Is this the present?